Welcome back to Joygasm, a video game and movie podcast. I'm Russ, and he is Steve. And it is very fun to be able to pull out the old 80s hairdos in episode 248 today, November 4th. Is it 2021? Yes, it is. I've been on the struggle bus lately with those dates, Steve. I apologize. Our little program today is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be catching up with each other before going right into our topic of the day, which is the Guardians of the Galaxy game impressions, which you can fast forward to if you look at the detailed timestamps located below. But before we go any further, make sure you air guitar that subscribe button. Maybe headbang that notification bell. That way you will not miss a single episode of Joygasm that drops once a week, every week. Now that we have that out of the way, Steve.
Yes.
Welcome back to the show, my bodacious brother. Welcome back.
Thank you.
What exactly have you been up to this past week? I haven't seen too much of your ass.
Yeah, Russ, just been hanging out at the house with a wife. We haven't gone out all that much. Haven't come over here. Watching some movies. We were trying to watch some, kind of light-hearted stuff compared to the kind of the heavy stuff that we've been watching,
Makes sense, yeah.
And plus, when you come home from work, you don't want to, you want to just let down. You want to eat your dinner, you want to watch a movie, you just want to kind of forget about your day.
I understand.
So
I definitely understand.
We've been watching Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan! Jackie Chan has a special place in, I think, a lot of people's hearts.
Yes, he does, Russ. Yes, he does. So we watched the entire, the 1, 2, and 3 of Rush Hour.
Okay, Rush Hour is, that's one of those go-tos where, you could literally play that in the background every day, and it would just be, oh, it's Rush Hour.
It's awesome. Rush Hour, yeah, it's cool. And then we watched Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Nights. Russ.
Those are also, those are a lot of fun. Owen Wilson. Good times. They never made a third one out of that, did they? They stopped at the Shanghai Nights.
Yeah. I don't know where they were going to go after the Shanghai Nights, but they didn't ever make a third one. I think he had to go to other projects and then just moved on.
I see.
And I think Owen Wilson moved on too or something. It just never happened. Never fell into place. What are you going to do?
I see.
And then we decided to turn it up a notch, and we watched The Predator.
Oh, wow. So you went from lighthearted Jackie Chan to then feeling a little too lighthearted, and you need something a little more heavy.
Yeah, well, the thing is, why that happened really is that Amazon, I don't know, Amazon Prime, I think, just watches your playlist, like stuff that you put on there you want to watch. And it could be free to me at the time. And then the very next day, it's like, oh, you want to rent that? $3.99, please. You're like, it was just free yesterday. You give me a break. So that's what happened really with The Predator is that I put it on the watch list to watch and it was free. And then so when we decided to watch it, it was $3.99. I thought we ain't gonna watch it for $3.99. It was free before. I'm not gonna pay him $4. Call me cheap, but whatever. So I'm like, it's gonna be free again. Just trust me. And that was months ago. Well, maybe 2 months ago. Anyway, so then this past weekend, we turned Amazon back on, and of course it's free. I'm like, yes, we're watching it.
That is so odd. That is something that I know that we've talked about to a certain extent in the past, where Amazon Prime, I don't know if it's just their shenanigans that they're kind of pulling their subscribers through, or what the deal is, but it never seems to be as straightforward as, say, Netflix. Netflix, you go in, what you're paying for, you have, but Amazon has these different tiers almost, or levels, where it's certain things will probably always be free, but then there's these other tiers of content where it's oh, maybe we'll make it free. You know what it reminds me of as I'm talking about it is actually the old HBO days, because back in the day, like HBO would sometimes make its channel free for like a weekend.
Right. Well,
and the idea being to entice new people to start wanting to subscribe to their channel. And then, you know, most of the other times you would have to pay for it and whatnot. But I remember even when we were kids, like that was kind of an exciting thing. Like, oh, HBO is, you know, you can watch, you know, Gremlins for free or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of the channels did that. I think, you know, Showtime, Stars, they just do that to market, basically. Yeah. It's basically what you're saying. So, like, yeah, hey, you never thought about getting this package before? Well, hey, it's free this weekend. Yeah, you want to think about it, huh?
Yeah. I do wish, though, that if that is, in fact, what they're doing, I wish they would just be more transparent about it. Say, hey, we have this promotion going on, certain things that you would normally have to pay for through Amazon Prime, you know, let's say it's a weekend, you know, Saturday and Sunday, these tiered items that normally would cost you extra, like a premium price on top of your subscription, they're free. And just be able to push that to their subscribers. I think that would be actually a nice gesture on Amazon's part.
It would. So it is a bit confusing. I will say that. With HBO Max, of course, you know, you'll get everything free on there, and then they'll swap out some of their shows. So you'll see like a segment that says, you know, this stuff's about to leave, FYI, and then, you know, that stuff will leave, and then they'll bring in a new slew of movies. Again. Right. And so anyhow, but everything there, of course, is free because you're paying for the subscription. Which is, I mean, you're paying for Amazon too. I don't know. It's just kind of frustrating. You're like, oh yeah, that's free. Because what I'll do sometimes is after my wife goes to bed, I'll go through and I'm like, okay, what do we want to watch? You know, I kind of add to my list. And then when the time comes, we're like, okay, yeah, I know we'll watch Thank You for Smoking, I think is one I put on there. And then I'll go back to it. I put The Godfather. That's a great example. I put The Godfather on there because she's never seen it. And it's free. And I went back and you got to rent it.
Yeah, they need to fix that. I think it's an easy fix. And if they were to do that, I think that it would honestly please a lot of their subscriber base, because I think that people they enjoy the platform. I just think that there needs to be more of a clearer understanding of what it is that Amazon has for free versus what is not for free. It definitely, it muddies the water a little bit bad. Anything else?
I think that's about it, Ross.
That's about it.
Oh. No, I've just been playing, just Far Cry. I'm trying to.
Are you close to beating it?
Yeah, I'm getting there. I am definitely getting there. I've gained a lot of weapons. You know, Far Cry, what I've learned is you don't really have to buy anything because eventually you're going to acquire everything anyway. It's like, I really don't have need for money.
Yeah.
I just, progress. And I might upgrade my weapons a little bit, but I'm slowly but surely taking everybody out. I think I concentrated too much on one of the camps and then a significant thing happened in the story, and then it goes, oh, all the security has been revamped across the map. I'm like, wait a minute, and then so you had to be like level 6 to actually make a dent somewhere, and now you had to be level 8. I'm like, oh, great. I guess I'll do some more teeny weeny stuff until I can get there. But
yeah,
anyway, game was fun. Yes.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Steve. Yeah, I have not actually been playing Far Cry 6 recently. In fact, it's funny to think about the number of titles that have been released this year that I have not gotten through yet. I mean, Deathloop is another one.
Yes.
And then when it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that one has been taking up the lion's share of my time. However, I have also been playing Luigi's Mansion 3 on the Nintendo Switch. It was a title that I bought. I want to say it was like 1 or 2, maybe it was 2 years ago. Anyway, it got really good reviews on sites like IGN. And I was thinking, okay, this looks interesting. It's you take control of Luigi, of course, and you're going through this like haunted hotel or whatever, and you're having to try and free your buddies and whatnot. And there's all these poltergeists and ghosts and different types of situations. It's kind of like Nintendo's version of Ghostbusters, really, because like Luigi has like not a proton pack, but he has like a vacuum cleaner, and and instead of like ooze, like like in Ghostbusters, like you have like either the pink ooze or the green ooze. Slimer, of course, is one of the classic icons from that particular IP. But in this one, you have what's called Gooigi, and Gooigi is this like oozy version, like almost like a gummy bear version of Luigi, which from a gameplay mechanic standpoint is actually quite original and quite fun, because you go through these different types of puzzle scenarios where you have to rely on Gooigi in order to like progress forward, or maybe you have to utilize both Luigi and Gooigi at the same time doing it's like the kind of like that like help each other out kind of thing. So there's a lot of smarts and cleverness that the game designers put into the game. And my daughter really enjoys the game too. Like she's a really big Nintendo Switch fan, because most of the titles on there are more appropriate for her age level, which is great, because then that means that there's more daddy-daughter time, right? Like you sit down and she's in this really fun phase where she's really into Halloween. She's into zombies and ghosts and vampires, that sort of thing. And so she naturally has a curiosity to it. And it's a lot of fun, because there are multiple moments when like, the game will get a little spooky and she'll like kind of like huddle up next to my arm and then, hide under the blankets or whatever. And so I'm kind of like the one that takes on the boss battles, but she's the one. I've got to say, I got to sing her praises a bit, because she has a knack for knowing what to do in different rooms that I'm not even at that point yet. Like I'll be in a room and I'm like, yeah, I'm not really sure like, oh, what I'm supposed to do. Cause they have like different things. Like you have a flashlight that can trigger certain things. You have like kind of like a poltergeist ray that can sometimes trigger things. You have like this plunger that you can shoot out and like, pull off of in order to like move stuff or what. I mean, there's a number of different things you can do. You have the vacuum cleaner that can either blow or suck. And so like, depending on which room you're in, different items will have different needs. She will nail it every time. She's like, Daddy, try do this. I'm like, do what? She's like, do that thing with that part right over there, whatever. It works. And she's 6 years old, and she's like remembering all these different mechanics that are in the game, and she knows how to correctly apply them even before her old man knows how. And as you know, Steve, I've got a wealth. I would say probably somewhere in the vicinity of at least 35 years of gaming experience under this muffin top belt. So it's very interesting indeed. But figured you get a kick out of that. Even though I know you haven't played the game, but just knowing your niece, she's got the makings of a natural gamer, Steve.
Nice.
One other thing I thought would be fun, just pardon me for one moment, I have to pull it up here. So, this is a big doozy. So, this handsome little collection. I'm going to try and straighten that out a little bit so people can see it properly there. I think that's okay.
Sure.
Anyway, so this particular book, it's actually a two-parter. So if I were to rotate it a bit, you'll notice on the end there, these are actually two different books. And I've been looking forward to having this be delivered for a long time, because this actually is a very in-depth, almost like a timeline, if you will, of literally every single Marvel movie that was created. That I think it goes up to, I want to say Endgame. It may go slightly beyond that. I'm not entirely sure, because honestly, I haven't had time to really like dive into it. However, what's really cool about this is this book includes like all kinds of different types of concept designs as it applies to the movies that I've never seen before. And I have a number of different items that contain concept art and that sort of thing. There's a ton of stuff in here. There's a lot of behind the scenes photos that are not like the ones that you would find on like the web, for example. Like they put a lot of exclusive behind the scenes pictures in here. They also have a lot of verbiage in terms of different folks who had involvements in different capacities in different departments, that sort of thing. This is legit. I gotta tell you, like maybe someday if you're interested and you have some time, you'll be welcome to go through it. But there's an absolute ton in here. I just wanted to also show you, and this is pretty heavy too. Oh. Each one of these books. So I love the design of this as well. So you slide it out like this, and you'll notice, man, this is long. You'll notice that even like the cover has, that's the start of the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the original Mark I Iron Man suit. Which, by the way, I have to give a shout out to my buddy Greg Smith, who was one of the designers of that suit. And then in terms of the other book, just give me a second here to try and get it out here. What's really cool is that when you look at the cover on this other book, you'll notice that is the Iron Man gauntlet from Avengers Endgame. So it's this really neat, I'm trying to get it to, there we go, a little more of that light on there. Really neat presentation, how they've done all this stuff. I'm like trying to like do this without looking at it. Let me just move it up like this.
Don't want to wrinkle the pages there, Red.
Anyway, I have barely looked at these two books. I just did like a brief flip through. There we go. Oh, gotta be gentle. Gentle.
Okay.
Anyway, really, really cool. And I just, I can't recommend this enough. I mean, look at that. This is beautiful. It's a thing of beauty right there, Steve. Are you, I know you haven't seen the books yet, but do you like the presentation?
Cover art, Russ?
Yes, the box art, as it were.
The title here, Russ.
And ooh, look at that. Oh, man. It's even picking up your skin color. That's how white we are here in the Joygasm studio.
Man, we don't need no lights.
My. Well, put on your favorite 80s rock music because it's time for the topic of the day. Our topic of the day is the Guardians of the Galaxy game impressions. This is a game that was developed by none other than Eidos Montreal and through the publisher of Square Enix. We saw a bit of this game during, I want to say it was kind of like the online E3 presentation because Square Enix had their own presentation during that period of time. What's interesting is that this game really has not had a whole lot of like pre-hype leading up to its release. Like we saw, they had like the one in-depth gameplay demo. Remember that? Like we actually saw quite a bit of the gameplay, which we're like, wow, okay, this is pretty cool. But it is interesting to me how we really didn't, it wasn't like if you were to compare this to like say Cyberpunk 2077, that had years upon years of hype build up and almost to like its detriment in terms of like when players finally got it. So it's really cool to see this game finally in our hot little hands. I know that we've had slightly different experiences in the sense so I bought the game first. I bought it last week when it came out. I have already beaten the game. Like,
good job.
This game, thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. This game has sucked me in blissfully so.
Like a black hole, Russ.
How?
I'm on chapter 3.
Chapter 3. Yeah, so you're very early on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tell us, Steve.
Yes, Russ.
So what has been, okay, full disclosure.
Uh-huh.
Steve has been playing the game on just the Xbox One, not even the Xbox One X, just the Xbox One.
Right.
Take it away, Steve.
Well, one thing I got to say, Russ, is I was wanting to come over here and play it. Mm-hmm. After last week when you told me, hey, come by, I want to visit with you. I'm
correct.
like, you know what? I'll come over and play Guardian.
You are correct.
How about that? And then we had the Halloween, and you're like, hey, I got the game. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. It came out. And you're like, you should come over.
That's true.
Like, yeah, I should. And then you're like, yep, don't come over. Because I'm like playing it a lot, and I'm in the game, and then I don't want to spoil it for you. I'm like, Russ, just don't worry about it. I'll come over and play it. You're like, nope, don't come over. I'm like, you know what? There has got to be like a new game portion where you can save it on a different spot so that I don't see what you're playing.
Right.
And there is.
There is, however, the problem is that, first of all, you wouldn't have the game at home.
Right.
You know, you would be able to play it here for maybe like 2 hours, but then you'd go home and it wouldn't be there. So you'd still have to buy the game, and then you have to replay what you just played. Plus, the other thing is that that's how much I was enjoying this game, was like, I didn't want to put it down. And I think that's one of the things that I guess we could kick off with, is that this game is really fun. This is a fun game to play, but not in terms of like the reasons that you would kind of, I don't know, kind of glom onto first.
Okay.
For me, like, so this game I would say this game has heart and then some.
Yes.
And I think what's interesting about this is that when we first saw the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, we didn't know what to expect.
Right.
We went in, we're like, okay, we'll trust that they know what they're doing. We'll just see what this is about. And to our delight, it turned out being
fantastic.
Yeah, one of like the best new additions to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. However, like going into this game, I was once again unsure of, okay, are they going to be able to like, you know, strike lightning twice?
Yeah.
Because here's the deal. Like we've talked about in the past about how James Gunn is a rarity in the sense that he excels at kind of like this like misfit Motley Crue type of setup, right? So he did Guardians of the Galaxy. He did the Suicide Squad earlier this year. And I think that's something that is not an easy thing to do. Not to mention that this game was actually going away from the proven material from the MCU. And I think that's one of the kind of the makes your butthole pucker a little bit because, you know, like there are games where like they are successful at doing that. And there are games where they fail miserably
fail.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when it came to this game, we saw the demo, for instance, and I think we both were digging like the art direction of the characters. Would you agree?
I would. Yeah, for the most part. Quill looked a little odd. He looked kind of like a tool.
I think that's intentional though.
But it might have been intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't like dislike the way he looked. I just thought, man, that's really a but I was relieved. I didn't want them to be, you know, animating some rendering of Chris Pratt, you know, because that's not going to work.
Well, and see, I go back and forth with that because on the one hand, I have invested myself emotionally into the cast from the movies. So like if they were to recreate, you know, Chris Pratt or Dave Bautista or, you know, any of them in there, or maybe even like, rehire what's his name for the voice of Rocket Raccoon. You had Vin Diesel for Groot. You know, I think that and unto itself will be really rewarding. In fact, that's one of the things I talked about with the Marvel's Avengers game that Crystal Dynamics developed, was like, my thing was like, I really wanted to actually have like the Chris Evans Captain America, the Scarlett Johansson Black Widow, the Mark Ruffalo Hulk, the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man, complete with like them lending their voices. Like I literally wanted to have that kind of experience with that game, but instead it was something different. And I think that it was kind of a mixed bag in terms of how that ultimately worked out, because it wasn't like a sloucher visually speaking, but I do think that there were certain decisions that were made creatively or even with the art direction that I for me personally, I wish they would have gone with the MCU.
Yeah, I could see what you're saying, but I'm glad they didn't, because I think when you take what is very popular right now and you give it into the hands of another studio to say, continue working the magic the way Marvel Studios worked it, you're really banking on the fact that they're going to take it and do a Hail Mary all the way to the end zone. And if they don't, then it's a humongous letdown to the entire fan base. And so that is, I think, too much of a risk, maybe. So I was okay with it, because I thought, okay, I don't know how they're going to take the movie and put it into a game, because oftentimes those don't do very well.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't want them to kind of tarnish what I appreciate to see in the movies. Like, oh yeah, we got Robert Downey Jr. to do the voice, and then I would think, yeah, it really didn't do anything for me though, you know. And then they spent all that money, and you know, why not just have some new actors do it? So I was definitely okay with that, and I was okay with this too. I thought all the actors did a fine voice job over everything.
Yes,
and I thought the writing was very well. And you mentioned Avengers. I'm just going to throw in here that this game is basically everything Avengers wasn't.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Like I am not going to go back and play Avengers. Like I'm pretty much gonna call that a loss.
Well, you know? Yeah, and they didn't do themselves any favors either with that whole like pay to win scheme that they were doing, where in the store with Avengers. They were putting stuff in where if you wanted to pay money, you could literally buy like these, you know, loot boxes of XP, which would help you unlock other stuff. And the community, once again, was like, that is not cool. Like, there should not be paywalls in place in order to like boost your performance and stuff. So yeah, I would agree. But going back to Guardians of the Galaxy, I absolutely agree. I think that when it comes to the voice acting, it was superb. And I know you're only into 3 chapters, but honestly, you probably have a good idea of the quality level when it comes to this level of performance from the voice actors. Would you agree?
I would, yeah. I mean, what I was going to say with the Avengers thing is that basically everything is an improvement from that game. Yeah. I didn't want to go down a hole, but like the level design and
sure,
and the acting was still okay in that game. But I mean, the acting has definitely taken a step up in this one. The music, my gosh, is phenomenal.
Well, before we go into that, let's go back to some of the voice acting and the dialogue, because this is definitely an area that I feel was one of the strongest suits of the entire game. Like knowing the entire story now that I know and seeing these character arcs, like you are in for a treat basically. And I say that to all of you out there as well, because this isn't like a one-dimensional, oh, it's an action shooter and they just have quips that they throw at each other and everything else. They actually weaved into this story various character arcs within each one of the characters that are part of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Not to mention the fact that you're going to run into other characters in the game as well, and they, even though they are in a supportive capacity, hold their own totally. Like there is one character in particular that I can't wait for you to meet and get to know, and like by the end of this game, what's crazy about it is I almost cried. Like I got freaking misty-eyed when it came to like the last couple of chapters where like everything just kind of came to that crescendo moment. And again, that is kudos to the writers and to the voice actors for this, because they understand the spirit of Guardians of the Galaxy. That's part of the secret sauce that works within this world of Guardians of the Galaxy that James Gunn tapped into, is you have these different characters that each have experienced a sense of loss in their own way.
Right.
And as a result, they get triggered differently. You know, like there's different things that someone will say off the cuff, which is like, because you know, like some of the past of some of these other characters. I mean, I found myself kind of wincing at times where I'm like, ooh, don't say that. That's going to make so-and-so pissed off or whatever. And so, yeah, you're going to have a lot of fun with that. Another thing too, that I can tell you, and I'm not going to go into spoiler territory or anything like that, but the dialogue tree, which I know that you have had some exposure to,
right,
that also has a sense of consequence to it,
right,
from a relational level.
Yeah.
Which is cool, because I wasn't sure early on, like, okay, maybe it does some marginal things, whatever. No, like, I did certain things that really made like certain characters mad, and they held a grudge against me for like a large part of the game until I made it right. And on the other side of that coin, like, I did certain things where like there are certain characters where they really appreciated that, and as a result altered some of the different types of events that would transpire. So I think you're like me in the sense, like that kind of stuff we really dig. Am I right?
Yeah, I would say so. You know, coming to think of it though, on the regular Xbox One, you know, what'll happen is it'll bring up 2 little or 3 or 4 little dialogue boxes of choices you can choose to say certain things that you know, throughout the game, and then maybe more significant parts. Like, okay, you're talking to this person, they're asking you something, and you got to decide. You're not just walking and saying things off the cuff. And I would think, okay, there's a certain amount of time I got to say this in, but I didn't see the timer. And like, I don't know if it's a broken part on the Xbox One or what, but I'm like, okay, do I want to say this? Or do I want to say that?
Okay, so if you look at
I know it's in the center thing.
You found it. Okay.
I saw it tonight when I was over here, but I mean, I'm looking on my system for any kind of timer, and it's not there. And so there's been times it's like it just gives up on me, like time's out and the game has to move on. I'm like, nuts. Like there's that part where you have to like basically tell somebody to put something in the ship.
Right.
And I'm going, okay, well, should it be A or should it be B? And then I didn't choose anything. And it says, oh, you didn't choose anything. And I'm like, oh. And then I had to pay for it later on. I'm like, nuts. So anyhow, I just got to like fly with whatever choice, because I have to choose it like within 3 or 5 seconds, maybe. But
yeah, I
didn't know that until I got here. That's part of the area where maybe it's suffering a little bit on my system.
Well, and since you're talking about it, you had a chance to play for about 30 minutes or so tonight on the Xbox Series X. What kind of differences have you? I mean, obviously there are differences, but like, is this one as bad as some of the other games? Like you were playing games like, once again, Cyberpunk, for example, where this game clearly needs a lot of horsepower in order to run correctly or adequately, and you were talking about how it was like virtually unplayable on the regular Xbox One. However, with a game like this, I'm curious, how has the gaming experience been for you?
Well, it's still very, very pretty. I will say that. It runs at around 30 frames a second.
Okay, I figured.
So I mean, it's definitely playable, but you can definitely tell that they had to kind of simple things down a bit.
Down-res a bit.
Like downscale, yeah. So like, for example, in the beginning of the game, you see his mom.
Yeah.
And or like when Peter Quill looks in the mirror, that's a good example. And he's like doing little things like, hey.
I love it too when he's like trying to get something off his teeth or whatever. Like,
I think there actually is there something actually in his teeth?
There may be.
Yeah. Anyhow, like the hair starts to kind of like mesh together, and it looks like it's kind of hexed, a little bit. And sometimes the faces get a little blurry, or like if they're trying to make an expression, it kind of looks a little, I mean, it's not terrible, but you could just tell, or there's a lot of like polygon bleed through kind of thing.
Sure.
Anyhow, so on the Series X, though, I mean, there's a lot more color shading, I would say, definitely. 60 frames a second, and some HDR going on as well, which you definitely can tell. So,
well, and apparently I read something about how they are planning on releasing a patch for the Xbox Series X version that will have ray tracing. And I don't know if they've already done that or if that's still to come. But if it's still to come, I mean, I'm already blown away by the graphics engine on this. Like you said, it is a very pretty game.
Right. And what I do appreciate is that they're incorporating all these different kind of elements in the game. So like you get the movie sequence where you have to interact with with your different characters, Groot and Rocket and Gamora, whoever, and so it forces you to watch like this kind of interactive cutscene, which is nice. And then of course you have the action and the shooting, which is nice. And then you have other parts like where you're kind of flying what's the ship name? Milano.
That's a great ship, though.
That's a freaking awesome ship. I've loved that ship since I saw the first Guardians. If I get like one of those statues you have around here, I'm gonna get like a model of that ship.
That's a good idea.
Anyhow, it reminds me of some of the spaceship shooters that I played back in Sega CD days, or like even like PlayStation, like Genesis, or even like with like PlayStation 1. And I always wanted it to look this good.
Yeah.
And now that I played a small little sequence there, I'm like, makes me look forward to Chorus, or where that one comes out. But man, it was so beautiful. And then, we can move on. So we have to talk about the music at some point, though. Right? We got to talk about.
We can talk about it now if you want. I mean, I will just simply add that if you liked that ship sequence, there are more.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
Indeed. So yeah, let's go ahead and swing over to the music, because this is a success story from a game development standpoint, because music is, especially like actual music from real musical artists, that it has always been a challenge for various studios. Like in the past, like you could typically get maybe one song as like something you would use for the game trailers, right? There were certain exceptions, like what was it, like Rockstar, or what was it called? It was the guitar game. There's Rock Band and Guitar Hero. That's what it was.
Okay, yeah.
I was combining and bastardizing like both titles. That's
Hero Guitar. Yeah. That one.
Band Rock. I don't know. Anyway, those were the exceptions in the sense that like their entire like paradigm was being able to license lots and lots of music. And what was interesting was I recall learning about the story of that, because when they first released the game, they actually had a very limited selection of titles. However, as the game was successful and built up this clout, and then you actually had the musical celebrities begin to play the game and realize, hey, this is really cool. They didn't want to miss out. So then they started proactively talking to Harmonix or even Activision for, I think Activision was part of Guitar Hero. But there was suddenly like this interest. There was this dialogue between the musical artists who really saw the potential of this, because it's free advertising. Like if you have all these gamers enjoying these songs, I can even use myself as an example for that, where after I was playing, or as I was playing those two games, I suddenly became acutely aware of various bands and like the songs that correspond to various band names. Cause I'm notoriously awful at like, if I hear like a song on the radio, I'll like the song, but I'll have no idea what the name of that song is, and I will not know who the band is. And it's games like that where I'm like, oh, okay. And then what I'll do is I'll go on to like iTunes, for example, and I'll download that song right then and there and enjoy it, from there on out. So I think it's interesting how in Guardians of the Galaxy, they were able to go through this licensing of various well-known 80s songs. And I think it's
70s, actually. I think some
70s, some 80s. Yeah. Right in that 70s, 80s area. But my goodness, what a difference it makes when you have that playing. I mean, that is such a large part of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
And they put just the sequences of songs, and I don't even know all the names. I mean, you can turn on like a classic station. Yeah. You're like, oh, I know all this music, you know, and you would probably have it playing in the background. But it's like they went through and they crisped everything up to make it sound like fresh for today, like kind of, you know, not remixed but remastered.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking out the window of the ship and you're looking at this like the void of space and everything that it has to show, and then you know it plays, you know, some like, you know, Fear the Reaper or something in the background. It's like, it just really drives it home. Or you know, certain music when there's a high action sequence or when you're blasting an enemy. Oh, it's just
Have you unlocked a certain ability that allows you to huddle? I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just trying to be sensitive.
I know.
So that kind of thing is also, I feel like that is a byproduct of how awesome having all of these licensed 80s songs is, because if you activate that, it's just this cool rallying, like super move kind of thing. And you do so to like a randomly selected 80s song. And so it is, I find it very entertaining.
You know, speaking of unlocking though, so I mean, like you have Rocket Raccoon who loves, you know, tinkering with stuff, and so I knew from the very, very beginning that okay, there's gonna be stuff that you're gonna have to, you know, tinker with, upgrade, or, you know, level up, whatever. But one thing that I noticed, like from the very, like this is not a spoiler because it's the very beginning of the game. Is that you know, Star-Lord has those rocket boots.
Yes.
And so I kind of thought in the beginning, as I began to play the game, like, you know what, I'm going to see if I can do a double jump. And I could do a double jump with the boots. And then I thought, well, in the movie, he can kind of fly around for a little bit. And then I thought, okay, do I just hold the button down and do that? No. Like, you can't do it like whatsoever. So I'm guessing that later on that ability is going to be unlocked.
You are correct.
But then later, like someone mentions, something happened. I'm not going to say the scenario of what happens, but he goes, I need my rocket boots to fly up to somewhere. I'm like, what do you mean? You can't fly. You can just double jump right now. I'm like, you should have just given me that ability from the beginning. So, and then like, I was kind of hoping his little pea shooters would have a little bit more of an impact, I guess. And the only comparison I could really bring it to is like Devil May Cry, for example.
Yeah, that's a decent example, comparison.
From the beginning of the game, like you have, you know, guns that you can shoot, and the guns sound awesome. And of course, you acquire more like later in the game, but all the guns just always sound cool, and they look cool and whatnot. I feel like they have some impact. And these, again, I'm not very far in the game. I'm sure they're much better later on, but just in the beginning, it's just like these little just pea shooters. I'm like, I kind of take some of the coolness away. So
as you progress through the game, you do unlock various abilities, not only for Peter Quill, but also with every member of the Guardians, which is cool because it helps to keep things fresh and it helps you to strategize when you're in those different combat scenarios. The thing about it, though, and I guess we can pivot over to this since we're talking about it, is I feel as though actually the combat is the weakest part of the game, which is saying something because there are so many other parts. I mean, the graphics are great. The audio is great. The dialogue is great. The writing is great. Like
everyone's like faces and the expressions.
Oh, character animation.
Like,
everything. Yeah. I mean, it literally the one little like part that it is not necessarily like a bad thing. It's just, it becomes, as you progress through the game, you realize, okay, it turns into more of a slog than anything else. It's not it's not a deal breaker. It doesn't break the game. It doesn't cause me to like feel like I'm agonizing in this like really boring, mundane thing. But at the same time, I think that it is interesting to focus on the fact that like that is you do it so often in the game. I am surprised that they didn't spend a bit more time just exploring and figuring out, okay, how can we ramp this up a bit? But like I said, it's fine. It's just that is the part that is not like, I don't know, like when it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy, it's like the fighting is such like a pillar of who they are and what they do. You have to make it to 11, which you have certain abilities that you can eventually unlock that do push it to 11 in their own ways. But one of the things I thought about actually was Final Fantasy VII Remake, because if you recall, they completely redid their combat system.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. I mean, like as I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, it was no longer like the old school turn-based combat. Everything was completely in real time, and you had the ability to switch on the fly between the different characters within your party. You can't do that in this game. This game is more about you calling the shots, kind of in a squad tactics kind of thing, and they will then fire off whatever kind of ability you want them to do and that sort of thing. Or maybe there are like environmental hazards, which I appreciate. I do like the environmental hazards, but I was thinking about how it's interesting that Final Fantasy VII Remake is also published by Square Enix.
Yeah.
Even though there are different developers, it would have been cool maybe to like, I don't know, share the tech or at least take inspiration from each other from a studio basis, because I do wonder if that would have really helped with their combat mechanics to be able to like for me, it's like I found myself thinking, man, it'd be so cool if I could like fight as Groot for a while. And then I want to fight as Rocket Raccoon. And now I want to fight as Drax. And now I want to fight as Gamora.
Yeah, they're all like different fighting styles too. So that would have been awesome. Yeah, no, I was thinking that in the very beginning when I first hit the button to start the game. I thought, I want to play as Gamora. Like, I really want to play as Gamora.
Right.
And then, so when I'm progressing through the beginning and whatnot, I'm just Peter Quill, which I don't have a problem being Peter Quill. But then later on, like in some of these battles when we're all together, I seem to be the one doing everything.
Yeah.
And the enemy's all focused on me. And then everyone else is kind of like, oh, enemy. Punch. Stand there. Wait for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Punch. Like, are you guys gonna do anything?
Yeah.
Like, why wait for my command? So I don't know if it's like an AI thing. I mean, I know they're trying to make it difficult for the player. There has to be some sort of toughness, I guess.
Sure. But no, you bring up a good point in the sense that the AI itself could have been improved upon. And it's interesting too to think about, which we can also kind of transition over to, which is the character animation, because all of the character animations that I saw, whether it was the enemies or it was the heroes, even like the vehicles themselves, for the most part, I would say the vehicles, there are certain moments with the Milano, for example, where I feel like it could have used a little more TLC. It just didn't, it felt a little like a toy or lightweight in some of the cinematic parts. Not too bad. I mean, luckily those are very few and far between. However, when it comes to like the various characters, I mean, I am obviously they're doing motion capture.
Right.
However, the new type of facial animation technology that they're using, I'm blown away.
Yeah, it's very expressive. I mean, you used to see like just kind of static images or maybe simple expressions like a frown or something, but like
I'm so terrified right now, but I can't express it.
What are we gonna do? I'm literally freaking out at this moment.
It's
guys.
Like the characters from the older games had a really bad case of Botox or something. It's really funny. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, but I mean, you see it from like the very beginning when his mom is talking to him. It's not subtle. Like you notice it. It's so very well done. It's actually probably one of the highlights of the game, honestly.
Yes.
Is everybody's face has this expression in the eyes and the mouth. And
the subtleties,
like all this nonverbal communication with their body gestures, it's really well done.
It is. I totally agree. And that's kudos to Eidos Montreal for that as well, because I think in a game like this where they were very pragmatic and purposeful in terms of telling a story that has a lot of heart in it, that focuses on it focuses on the concept of relationships. And what's really neat about it is that as you go along, it's not exclusive to just the main heroes. Literally, like the entire story is weaved around the idea of relationships with different folks. So even like the various villains that you come across, that will also play a part in the overall story. So again, it's this wonderfully harmonious type of like I don't know, like I said, like I was saying earlier, like subplots and character development that go through and complement each other to the point where like you get to the end of the game. And by the way, there is a lot to enjoy at the end. I'm just going to put that out there. Like, don't just like turn the game off when you go to credits. Okay. Because and again, this is something that I always appreciate is the ending to any given video game should be thoughtful. That is the opportunity for any studio to really have some fun.
Bring it home.
Yeah, because that is the ultimate reward for any gamer, right? Is like you've been able to beat this game. You have this euphoric high. You're like, yes, I did it, whatever. And there's nothing worse than when you just go right to credits and that's it. And you go back to the title screen. You're like, oh, like I want to see something epic. I want to see something memorable. Like, what are we going to do? And I can tell you that the way that they paced everything and what you will see, it just, again, it makes you grin. Like, you're just like, man, like this is such a fun game. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, this is seriously one of the best games of the year. And what I find so fascinating about that statement is once again, a lot of it has to do with the immersion quality of the game, not necessarily the actual like gameplay mechanics, which is weird because normally the gameplay mechanics plays such a fundamental role in terms of a game to be able to like think of it as like, you know, one of the best games of the year. However, in this case, I'm so pleased with the performances of the characters, the thoughtfulness of the story that they have put together. And again, like as you play, like, and I know you're only 3 chapters in, just so folks know, there's like 16 chapters. So there's quite a few and certain chapters are longer than others. So it just kind of depends on where you're at. But I found myself loving how easily it was for me to be able to escape from like kind of the real world stresses, you know, of everyday life, that sort of thing, and just effortlessly plunge myself into this world. And the longer I played, I mean, it was crazy. I was putting in like at least 4 hours a day playing this game. And it was crazy because I didn't realize how much time was passing. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm slogging through this. I'm going to try and I'm going to just, you know, muscle through this. It was not, it was so effortless in terms of playing this game that there were countless times where I just happened to look at my watch. I'm like, oh wow, it's like 2 a.m. I got to stop. I got to go to bed. I got to go to work in the morning. So that speaks very highly to what they were able to achieve.
Nice. I will say though, Russ, that where I am in the 3rd chapter, though.
Yes.
I agree that it does kind of pluck you out of everyday life, which a video game is supposed to do.
Absolutely.
But where I am,
you like butts.
Yes, I do.
You cannot lie.
Anyway. Where I am, these enemies are like taking out half my life with like a single hit. It's like the flying little buggy looking things. I'm like, I'm only on the 3rd chapter and I can't even like defeat these things without dying like in 2 hits. What in the freaking world?
Do you die a lot so far?
No, just on that part.
Just on that part. Okay.
Good. Great.
Yeah, no, that makes sense because they're ramping up slightly the difficulty of the enemies. Well, they're trying to condition you to rely more on your squad tactics.
I guess.
There's a certain formula to it, Steve. And you'll get it, I'm sure.
Before I throw the controller at the TV.
Oh. By the by, this game has a metric ton of achievements. Like I was going through this game and it was like my Xbox was constantly doing that little kind of, achievement noise over and over. I was like, wow, I'm curious how many of these things, and I know I didn't find everything. I know I haven't done everything, but having said that, my goodness, like they're being very generous. Why, thank you. I will take that.
My gamer score now competes with Brad's.
Not yet. No. I also wanted to add, going back to like the whole like immersion thing. I was also really taken with how much of this world really captured me. Like it captured my mind, my imagination as I'm playing through the game and I'm going to these different worlds. I think, again, this is part of the genius of what the story of Guardians of the Galaxy is all about from the comic books, is that you have this teenager, 13-year-old teenager, right, who gets swept away from his home, goes in and discovers how there is this entire universe full of all kinds of sentient life and different types of worlds to visit and languages to learn, everything else. And what's really neat about that is that he ends up growing up, actually the majority of his life. Because I mean, Peter Quill looks like he's probably in his like late 20s, early 30s, somewhere around there.
Late 30s, sure.
I mean, I don't know like what his technical
come on, Russ.
age is in the comics. But one of the things about that though is it gives him this boyish charm, right? Like, and we've seen that in the movies with Chris Pratt. We've also seen it here in the game where there's an immaturity, but it's like a charming immaturity where, because he wasn't raised up to being, like until he was 18 or something, with different types of rearing from parents and stuff, that there is that little kind of 10-year-old, that perpetual 10-year-old boy or 13-year-old boy that exists, and that somehow subconsciously acts as a vehicle for me as a viewer or a player to buy into that and be able to experience this huge world that he has grown accustomed to, right? Like he is used to going to these various places, seeing these aliens, interfacing, interacting, hooking up with them, whatever it may be. But for someone like me, I'm like, wow, this is so cool because of how they have fashioned it. Like, I'll tell you what it reminds me of.
What does it remind you of?
Flight of the Navigator. When I was a kid, when we went to the theater in the 80s and we watched Flight of the Navigator, that was a great movie.
Still today is a good movie.
By the end of that movie, it was like you wanted to go on that ship, right? Like you wanted to go with Max and be able to go on these crazy adventures and be with all these different alien life forms and that sort of thing. Like there was like that kind of fantasizing, I don't know, like just that fantasy high that I would get from something like that, where it's like, wow, like what if you could actually do that? And here I am, I'm a not an old timer, but I'm
not yet, Russ.
I'm in my 40s. So I think it just really depends on how these things are presented. But I can tell you with Ernest that despite me being in my 40s, like playing this game, I mean, I was once again being giddy as someone who could look at it through the eyes of, like, say, a 13-year-old, for instance. And I think that speaks really highly also of the game.
Well, I think part of that too is that what this game does well with is, if you think about, space and spaceships, space shooters, whatnot, you're in space, but it's nothing really but dark and stars is really what you see.
Yeah.
And that's it. But you don't explore the world or the alien life. Mm-hmm. And so this you definitely do. Of course, you're on like the big motherships, and of course you have a ship of your own, but you explore the planets and you can see where like there's war-torn ships, and there's just this big collection of, all these parts and resin or whatever it is. Or you're on an alien world and what you're stepping on is might be a creature, or it might just be some platform that's not exactly rock or not exactly grass, or but every planet out there is not just rock and poisonous gas, right. You know what I'm saying? Like Earth is the only green planet in the entire wondrous universe that actually has something else other than rock and poisonous gas. So, I mean, this game is good for also expanding your imagination because, you know, you visit different places and you see the life and you see the atmosphere and you see the weather and it just builds on that extraterrestrial life in a sorts.
Right.
So, in a way, that helps your imagination go wild too.
Well, in conclusion, I wholeheartedly recommend this. Like I said earlier, I've already beaten the game. I plan on going through. They do have a new game plus, so I'm really excited about that. They have all kinds of different outfits that, once again,
outfits, Russ.
I don't know if you were too much aware of that, but I wanted to make that known because I didn't really figure that out until I was probably like in chapter 5 or something. So I wanted to give you a heads up and let you know that almost every single chapter you go into, there will be outfits that are hidden in these like little purple canisters. So you got to keep your head on the swivel and look for like these other areas that maybe you have to use a character to access. I'll just put it that way. But doing so, like I have found a number, and again, it's not just Peter Quill. Like you have new outfits for each member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, which is great because I was going through that. I was like, oh my gosh, these are so cool.
I've found trinkets, but I haven't found any outfits. Not that I know of.
Right. So, and you also want to keep an eye out for more trinkets. There are a lot of trinkets in the game, which is great because it opens up more narrative opportunities when you're back on the ship. So you got to find where Peter has placed those trinkets of interest on the ship. And when you do, pick it up and then put it down, and then you'll have new dialogue options and that sort of thing. So that is a lot of fun. What about you, Steve? In terms of your impressions of the first 3 chapters, what do you have to say in conclusion?
Well, for me, the game is definitely flawed, mostly because it's on Xbox One and not the Series X. So
that's not necessarily like the game's fault. It's just the system that you're playing on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's times where like the characters are stuttering or, you don't have that flash and glitz and, all the shiny stuff going on like you have with the system that can do it. I've had my game crash a few times or tell me it couldn't load my saved game. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I start all the way over again, or Peter will bleed through the floor or something like that. I don't know. So part of it is the system that I'm playing on, but I don't want to like say that that's the game
right
because of the restriction of my hardware. So
someday, Steve. Someday you too will have an Xbox Series X.
Someday.
That really was off key. That
I didn't warm up yet. Had I warmed up, Russ.
My eardrums are feeling a little nauseous, Steve. A little nauseated.
Give me an hour. I'll come back and sing for you before I go to bed.
Sing a little opera.
Sing you a nice little
lullaby,
bedtime tale. Right in your ear, I'll give you a look.
That's how we do around here in this family. Any other thoughts?
Nah, that's about it, Russ. I mean, I'm looking forward to playing the game. Looking forward to playing. I mean, I think I need to finish Far Cry first. I need some completion in my life before I start brand new journey. And of course, I did start it because of the show. Because of you. All of you out there.
I've got to say, I was a little apprehensive because I wasn't sure if you had any interest at all in playing the game.
I had interest in playing the game. I was cautiously optimistic, which is a phrase we've been tossing around quite a bit lately, because I didn't want this to turn into another like Marvel's Avengers.
Yeah.
That was terrible. Yeah. So when you got it, I was just kind of hoping I would come over and play it with you and then see how good it was before I like lobbed out another $60 for it and then have it just start all over again like the last game was. And I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And then I was hoping you would just kick it into high gear and just beat the game so that I could come over and just play it anyway. And then that didn't happen. I'm like, all right, well, download.
I did try to beat the game. I mean, when you get to that in-game portion, those chapters are long. Like I was sitting there like, man, this is okay. I remember you texting me asking like, oh, so were you able to beat it? I'm like, I just now made it to chapter 15. Like this is going to take a while.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you got it. And of course, if you want to play it over here, you can.
Oh, thanks,
Russ. You're always welcome to come over and play.
I'll just return it then.
Oh, good. Yeah, do what you want to do, Steve.
Yeah.
That wraps up this episode of Joygasm. Thank you for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to check out patreon.com/joygasm to be able to enjoy exclusive perks and early access to the show. Not to mention, it financially helps us continue doing the show. Also, make sure you hack that subscribe button. Maybe give a hug to that notification bell. That way you will not miss a single episode of Joygasm, which drops once a week, every week. And while you're at it, do a search on your favorite social media platform of choice. Just do a search for @JoygasmTV. We're on just about every one of them, and we have all kinds of fun little nuggets of content that we place on there. Last but not least, do a search for Joygasm TV on Twitch to see us stream our gaming adventures live every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. We will look forward to hanging out with all of you once again next week.